Okay, so slurry seal inspection. This is going to be from an HD's point of view of what we've done here in Roseville, and seems to work pretty well for us. But just some key points to look for. Preparation and goals. Slurry seal description, pre-big package, agency preparation we'll go over. We'll go over contract language, specifications, and special provisions. A little bit on measurements and quantities. Verification of assets, very important. Pre-construction meeting. Inspectors' duties and responsibilities. Do they know what they're supposed to be doing out there? Your inspector can make or break a project, and we're going to go into some of the details of the do's and don'ts of what the inspector should or shouldn't be doing. And also benchmarks of a successful project. So first on the list is slurry seal description. Slurry seal shall consist of a mixture of emulsion asphalt, aggregate, water, additives, and proportion mixed and uniformly spread over a properly prepared surface as directed by the buyer's authorized representative, which is usually the engineers in charge of the project. The slurry seal shall be applied as homogeneous mat, adhered firmly to the prepared surface, and have a skid-resistant texture throughout the surface life. Microsurfacing, what we use a lot here, type 2. Microsurfacing shall consist of a mixture of polymer modified emulsified asphalt, mineral aggregate, water, and additives proportioned, mixed and uniformly spread over a properly prepared surface, as again directed by the buyer's authorized representative. Microsurfacing should be capable of performing in variable thicknesses, cross sections such as ruts for rut filling, scratch courses, and milled surfaces. After curing an initial traffic consolidation, it should resist further compaction. The microsurfacing shall be applied as homogeneous mat, adhered firmly to the prepared surface, and have a skid-resistant texture throughout its service life. We use micro quite a bit here in residential and on our arterials. Microsurfacing is a quick traffic system that allows traffic to return shortly after placement. Normally, the system is required to accept a straight rolling traffic on about a half-inch thick surface with 1 hour after placement of specific application conditions. Stopping and starting traffic may require additional curing time. So things to look for, that's just a definition we're going to go into right now. We're not going to get into too many details, but we'll just move forward from here. So type 1 slurry is another slurry that we use as well. And we use this in our low areas, such as bike trails and parking lots. The type 1 has been working very well for us on these bike trails just because it adds a little bit of skid resistance, but yet it's smooth enough to use rollerblades, skateboards on, and then for the bicycles and the joggers as well. And then we're using them in parking lots because it just gives us a better coat than using a regular parking lot seal. And we're getting many more years out of it. We've got a parking lot here in our courtyard that's been there for probably, the surface trim's been on there at least 7 to 10 years now, and it's wearing beautifully. I didn't get any pictures of it, but it's working really well, and that's what we're using in all of our parking lots from now on. We've also tried to do a mini cape seal, if you will, like a 2-layer slurry in the parking lot, so we've had to redo the striping. So we did a type 1, wanted to reduce some striping because it wasn't put down right to begin with, so we just covered it up with a parking lot seal, and we found out that putting a parking lot seal right on top of that type 1 kind of seals in that sand and the rock that's in there, and we're getting a good longevity out of that as well. So a couple things to think about. Type 2 slurry, mainly what we use in our residential streets, protected pavement, creating new wearing surface. As you can see on the right, this is the type 2 going down, and it's been prepared. You can see the crack seal and very minimal cracks. We've done the crack seal, the prep work on it. And then the picture on the left is a clean surface, is what it should look like before the slurry goes down. No crack seal was placed on that, not yet, but that was just a picture of one of our streets before we put a type 2 on it. Next up, type 2 microsurface, typically used for sealing arterial streets, protect pavement, create new wearing surface. The microtreatment is used. Treatment uses a chemical break versus an atmospheric break and sets up faster than a slurry to allow traffic on it faster. This is one of the best qualities about this product because we can put it down, sets up a little bit faster in 45 minutes to an hour. That's how long it should take. If it takes 2-3 hours or more, then you've got a slurry and you didn't get a micro because you're not getting the chemical break. But we've been using this with high success in our arterials, and we also use it in residentials. By using it in residentials, you can put it down and let traffic have it that much faster instead of waiting your typical 2 to 4 hours for a typical type 2 to set up. So it works very well in residential areas, and we've been using it quite a bit. So the agency pre-bid package, this is the very beginning. You've already got your streets picked out. You're going to get your pre-bid package out to all the bidders out there. So list areas of contract that the bidders should be paying attention to. A lot of times we send out these projects, we get the bids in from the contractors, and they didn't even go out and look at it. They're busy doing their thing, and they're just looking at the specs, and they're saying, oh, I got so many square feet to do. Looks like it's all residential and some arterials, maybe a couple bike trails. If they don't go and look at it and see what the job entails, and maybe these areas are hard to get to spots, there's going to be problems, and we've had problems that I'll talk about. Encourage the bidder to read the specs. Sometimes we change the specs from the last large project than we have in the past. So if the same contractor is bidding again and we updated the specs, make sure they read it. Maybe we did make a couple changes in there. Maybe we added a couple more roller passes in there. It's going to change the specs and going to add to the costs. We don't want to find out about that later, so we make sure everybody reads it up front. Get the package out to all bidders in plenty of time. If it's a large project with many different areas of the city, they need time to review the specs in the different areas. Don't put it out there and expect 2 weeks for somebody to get a turnaround. Use 4 to 6 weeks, 8 weeks. Get it out there as soon as you can in the wintertime for summer projects. So the contractors have plenty of time to look at it. We had one project come up, we threw some bike trails on it, type 1, with a lot of type 2 micro for the residential and for some arterials. But we threw some bike trails on there, and the bike trails were adjacent to the road, and they were a class 1 bike trail down by the creek. They didn't realize this, and they just figured, oh, it'd be a bike trail easy to get to. Well, one of the bike trails, they got onto it. The sprinklers didn't get turned off in time. It was wet. Their truck was too heavy for the bike trail, and they had to find different ways or find some other provisions to put that type 1 down. It became a problem because they told us that they're saying that, oh, we didn't know about that. We didn't know it was off the road. And then we're telling them, well, that was in the bid package. You guys need to look at that. So that's one of the problems that we came up with, that we need to make sure the contractor looks at the bid package and understands what's there. And then the engineering staff be available for questions before we actually open the bids, or before their deadline comes up to turn it in. Agency preparation. Select the appropriate resurfacing treatment. Are you putting down slurry? Are you doing a cave seal? Are you using the right treatment on the right road? Is what it comes down to. So that's part of your pavement preservation package, or whatever you're doing. Make sure you're using the right treatment. The contractor doesn't want to come out there and put a treatment down that's not going to last. That just makes everybody look bad. Contractor doesn't want to do it just because they're going to say, well, this is going to make the whole thing look bad. It's going to fall apart in 3 years instead of lasting the 7-10 that you wanted. So make sure you got the appropriate treatment for the right road. Start the preparation, several months ahead of the contract. Crack seal, minimal overbanding. All this stuff should be done a year, at least 6 months in advance, or a year in advance. That's what we do here at Roseville. We try to stay 1 year in advance. So in one summer, we're prepping the roads, and that road is going to be resurfaced in the following year. Crack seal the gutter lifts if needed. Well, I got some pictures that will show you about that. Very important. Patch and pave all the low areas. Make sure that's all done ahead of time. Abate the weeds in the gutter lips. Get those weeds out now. They're going to come back, but more of them you get out now, you have less growing time for them to come back. Contractor will help you get rid of those as well, and you can also add that to the contract. The contractor will either burn them out or take them out, physically take them out with some method that they want to use. Balance around utility iron. Make sure you don't have to raise any iron. If you do, get it done right away and get it done now. And then surface is dry and clean. As we talked about in the previous slide, make sure that surface is dry and clean so that slurry gets a chance to adhere. We don't have any problems out there. Crack seal we talked about, doing the gutter lip. All your water is flowing all the way down to that edge, trying to get to the gutter, and all that water wants to go in that crack. So make sure the weeds are gone, and then go ahead and crack seal. This is what our crews did. You can see from the edge right there, we've got a little bit up onto the gutter, concrete gutter, but it's not bad. And that's exactly what we want to see. So when you put the slurry down, the slurry is going to go right on top of that crack seal material and overband it just a little bit into the gutter, 1 inch into the gutter. And we'll talk about that in future slides. Another picture of a large crack. And this is one of the questions is, what are you going to do with this? This is a little bit large to put just regular crack filled material in. So we use a mastic material on this, which is basically a crack filled material with some sand in it. And it holds up very well. Actually, you could put crack fill in this, it would just take a little bit more, but you got to get the weeds out clean it out well, and then it'll turn out and look like this picture on the right. And that's exactly what you want. So next picture, we had some trenches that need to be done. We started getting some major cracking going across the road. So a couple of these we had to come over and grind it out, put in new pavement, and then crack seal it again. So we did this a couple of years in advance, and all of a sudden the pavement started moving again. We ended up with more cracks. So with that, we just did more crack seal. And sometimes we had to put the mastic material on there to get some materials to suspend in there to hold a little bit better. But the main thing is get a crack seal, get everything sealed up before the project gets there. So here's a good one. Here's something good to talk about as far as preparation for your drainage. Why was this sectional sidewalk left in the project and not replaced? This is additional maintenance for the crews in the near future and a waste of taxpayers' money. And believe me, they'll tell you about it. So if you look in here and you can see hopefully you guys can see my cursor, that the cracks on the sidewalk on the top, that one's not so bad. That can stay, not a big deal. But it's the cracks down around the grate, the framing grate. You can see the cracks coming into it. You see the saw cut right here. They actually took the time to cut it and get as close as they can instead of just taking this whole thing up and repouring it, which would have been the correct thing to do. This next slide shows a little bit closer to that. You see the cracks right here coming up to the edge of the storm grade. That's your stress point. A couple of another crack here. There's a saw cut that they did right on the edge. They took the time to saw cut that. This would have been a perfect example. Just take it out, redo it. Because what's going to happen is the water's going to get in here. It's going to get worse. This happens to be at a bus stop here where Roseville meets Sacramento County. And this is going to get worse. This is going to start to spall a little more. The water's going to get underneath this. It has a chance to get underneath the road. And once it does that, you're going to ruin the road from the bottom up. And that's something you don't want. So take care of it while you can. There's no reason this should have been left. And it's a good example of the inspector can get out there and look at this stuff and then alert everybody about it, alert the engineering staff. And they may say they might want to keep it. They know about it, but you know what? Let them make that decision. You can bring it to their attention. Next slide is make sure you're pre-inspecting the whole job. This was one of the courts that had blown up. We had done all the prep, but this one had blown up from the year before, had a bad winter, and the garbage trucks just did a number on this court. So this is going to take time. This is going to ruin the schedule for the contractor. They're trying to come in, get things done and move out within a few weeks because they have other jobs to go to. So if you find this ahead of time, the inspector finds it, notes it, brings it up to everybody right away, and then we can get it fixed. Whether the contractor is going to do it and get a crew in, or for our purposes, our city staff would go out there and fix it. So we would take care of that beforehand and not hold up the project. So pre-construction meeting. Few rules for the meeting to have a smooth project. Set the foundation of mutual interest in a successful project. Establish communication flow. Who's going to be the point of contact, and who's the one you want to be? Who do you want to be the main point of contact for the whole project? Reiterate contract details and points and the limits. What's the limits of the project? Has everybody seen it? What's the detail points? We'll get into those in a minute. Clarify potential points of conflict. Damage to resurfacing treatment. Who's going to take care of that and when? Measurements. Did we measure everything? Is there enough? Are the quantities correct? Schedule sequence. If you missed a street, it moves to the end and will be reposted. That's the easiest way to do it. So you find out they missed the street. It's like, oh man, you guys didn't get this one. We need to come back to that one. Let the contractor know right away. They can come back to it at the end because you got to do the reposting and make sure everybody knows about it. So if you get it reposted right away, squeeze it back into the schedule or put it at the end, but you got to give ample notice for all the residents so they can plan accordingly as well. Set up weekly meetings for your project. Very important. If it's on a Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, Mondays are usually not the best days. Fridays are usually not the best days. So one day during the week, set a time up and make it mandatory that everybody goes to it. These are very important. I put this picture in here because you'll notice all the people in the picture. This is kind of how our pre-con meetings look. We have everybody there, all the engineering staff, some of the maintenance supervisors, myself, all the inspection staff, and the hired inspection staff that we've been bringing in lately. Everybody comes to this first meeting, but the meetings that go on weekly don't need to be everybody. Usually that's the engineering staff, the inspector, and the contractor with a couple of representatives from each, and it's usually much smaller. But the first meeting needs to happen because you've got everybody there, all your players are there, and everybody gets on the same page and they know what to expect. So inspector responsibilities continued. They need to know the contract specifications, his or her responsibilities, the empowerment. What can and can't they do out there? Do you want them shutting down the job if they see something wrong out there, or do you want the resident engineer to be doing that? What is expected from the contractor? The dates, the times, the schedules. When are you going to be sampling the products, that type of thing? What is the final product supposed to look like? Does everybody know? Does the inspector know? He should know. So when it goes down, and the resident engineer should know, they know what to look for and what it should be looking like, just to give you a good product. Verify quantities and measurements. That should be done way ahead of time. And the inspector should have gone out and seen the plans ahead of time, walked the job, or at least driven the job, the whole job, to make sure everything is correct. Measure the temps, humidity, and wind speed. This is something important every day for the inspector's diary or logbook, however you want to say it. The temp should be written down, humidity, wind speed. If you don't have the tool to do this, just get online, check your weather that's online for your area, and just write everything down. So, and just make sure that you put everything down and document everything to what it is. So, and then going back to verifying quantities and measurements, make sure you've documented everything that you've done. So you have documentation for the resident engineer to see that you verified all the quantities and the measurements. Make sure you document. Everything has to be documented, everything you do. At the end of the day, you're going to be spending a half hour a day or an hour documenting everything you've got. And then also communicate, communicate, and communicate. Very important. Make sure everybody knows what's going on at all times. If you see something that's wrong, say something. If things look good, say that too. You know, let the contractor know, let the resident engineer know. The inspector is the key person that does all the communicating to and from that contractor. It shouldn't come from anybody else. I don't call the contractor directly when I see something going on. I always go through the inspector. The engineer does the same. We go through the inspector and they filter all the communication. So somebody threw in here for 4 C's of communication. Clear, meaning the verbiage, direct, to the point, concise, brief, but understandable. Get right to the point. Complete, all necessary information included. So that's your communicating on written. Make sure everything is written down that we were talking about earlier. Make sure it's complete. And then consistent from front to back, all information is the same. All the information you're collecting every day and taking in your notes needs to be the same every day. So we know what to expect and everybody knows if we have to come back and look at these notes, we know every day, we know what information is going to be in there and it's going to be consistent every day. So, and then you're going to be communicating a lot of this stuff to the contractor and the resident engineer. So make sure everything is there and make sure you're consistent. So we'll talk about best management practice for drainage. Are all BMPs in place? What is the stormwater plan for the project? This should have been talked about at the pre-construction meeting. You know, do you have diapers for every drain? Do you guys want to cover the drains just with plastic and just plug them all up? That's fine too. You know, whatever it is for the BMPs and how you're going to address that needs to be addressed in the pre-con meeting so everybody knows what it is and everybody knows what that stormwater plan is. This is very important. So here's a good picture. Is this okay? You know, are the BMPs in place? Where's the drain protection for that stormwater plan? I don't see anything on the drain, and you can see the material that's already gone in. It's a little bit wet in there. The water's already gone down. Nothing was placed there, but yet you can see the slurry's been placed. This happens to be a Cape seal because there's a chip underneath that, but it's all the same because we're getting a little bit of raveling for the slurry on the top. But yet there's nothing there to protect all that rock from going down the drain. That rock is not supposed to go down the drain. The water is not supposed to go down the drain off the job. Specifically, if there's any oil that came off that or any, if they had a malfunction on the truck, where's that stuff going to go? It's going to get caught in the drain. That's the last thing you want. So make sure your BMPs are in place. This one should have been covered up. So here's a good example of a little bit of slurry that got away from the contractor. Good thing that plastic was down on the drain. So it came right to the edge, went over the top, but it's all good. It was all caught. You can see up in the top of the, a little bit more top of the middle of the picture here where I've got my cursor, if you can see it. The truck was starting to have some problems and they came off the edge a little bit. They should have been 1 inch over lip of the gutter lip, but you can tell they came off a little bit. And then right when they came down by the drain, it looks like it came out from under the box. I'm not sure what happened on this job, but it came out and went way over the gutter lip and almost into the drain. So this will be something to be on your punch list. Let the contractor know, and I'm sure they'll write it down because they'll see this. This is a big one, and they'll have to come back and clean this up. So placement of slurry. Surface must be dry and clean. I don't care if it's a type 1, type 2, type 3, whatever slurry it is. Make sure it's dry and clean for a successful project. The slurry should extend 1 inch past the gutter lip, like I've been talking about a couple of slides. What happened here? This one just went way over. You can see at the top of the picture, they did really well. Once it's coming around the corner, didn't do so well, and it went way over. A lot of times this happens. If we have just a couple areas, we're not going to worry about it too much, but we've had a few projects where they did this on quite a few streets in a residential project. And our fix was to have the contractor come back, and we just recommended to them to come back with a hot pressure washer to get all this off and get it back to 1 inch. That's what we did. So again, if they get out there with a pressure washer, that's water that they're putting in the gutter. They got to put the BMPs back and then get back out here and start pressure washing this. So that's just one way to do it. You can try to scrape that up. It's really hard to do, but we found pressure washing works the best and get back to that 1 inch lip. So here's another one. Slurry needs to be of the gutter lip over 1 inch. Contractor responsible to clean a rock from sidewalk. So the slurry here is great. Looks like 1 inch, looks a little less in one spot, but it's really good. Really nice tight edge on this one. The mat looks really good. And then the contractor responsible to clean the rock from the sidewalks and driveways. When you're placing this down, it starts to dry. Vehicles get to it, and maybe before a sweeper gets to it, the rocks will hit the gutter, and then they get tracked up into the side, onto the sidewalk and onto the driveways. The contractor responsible to take a blower out or sweep it, whatever they want to do, and get all the rock off the sidewalk and the driveways. And this happens daily. This isn't at the end of the week. This isn't every other day. We do this daily, and it is in the specifications for that. So they know that they're going to need extra people to go out there and clean this thing off every day. When the residents come home, the last thing they want to do is start tracking through the rock, or kids come out to play, or they're in the driveway and they're tripping on the rock. They may not trip on it, but they're going to track it back in the house. And when you start getting the calls for rocks inside the house, that's when you got problems. Then you know the contractor didn't clean it off. So that's just one of the things in our specs. So what went wrong on this one? This is a good one that happened a few years ago. You can tell that the contractor went over and we wanted them to clean it up. So what did they do? They painted it. They tried to disguise it, painted over it, and made it look like tried to find some paint that looks like the gutter. Oh, my light just went out of my office. Sorry about that. And they went over and painted it and tried to fool everybody. So we saw it, took some pictures, had them come back out, and then they had to pressure wash all the paint off and reestablish that 1 inch line over the gutter lip with a slurry. This is actually a type 2 micro on this one, on these two pictures, and they had to come back and fix it. So another picture, the third picture to the right, same thing, went way over on arterial, and this is something you need to come back and fix because it's 1 inch over. This is one of the slurry seals placed too thin over the rubber chip. This wasn't just a slurry, it was a rubber cape seal. I wanted to show this one because not only did they go over the lip a little bit, well, not too bad. They went over a couple spots there, but the mat was too thin. So what are the specifications for pounds per square yard when it's going down? Was it 15 to 17, 14 to 18? What was it? Whatever we had here, they didn't make it, and they spread it too thin on this. You can see the slurries crumbling off and some of the rock from the chip seals coming underneath. You can see it coming through, and it's just too thin to be putting down. So make sure they're putting the mat down the thickness it should be. If it's usually 14 to 17 pounds per square yard, that's what they need to be doing. Know the specifications and make sure you got your truck calibrated so they're doing that. This could have been around, it looks like around the bulb, and it could have been just spread a little bit too thin on one of them. Not the whole job is this way, but you need to pay attention to this because they can come back and they're gonna have to come back and fix this. This one's old. This is probably from 05 or 06, but that's what happened on this job. Wrong way. So this one is the ADA ramps. So go back one. Here we go. ADA ramps for smooth transition. I just wanted to show this, that the picture on the left shows when we put a chip seal down, we leave the chip back, and we just have the contractor to put something down, and so they can bring it back so we have a smooth transition going to that ADA ramp. If we didn't, we would have 3/8 rock or 1/2 inch rock chip going up the gutter lip and then putting another 5/16 rock on top of that and from the slurry. And that would be too much of a lip for the ADA ramp. So the picture on the right is how it should look, nice and smooth with a straight edge. And you'll notice they're blowing off the sidewalks. That's what they're doing. This is actually doing it from a chip seal, but they'll be doing that again when we slurry as well. And then this is the final product. This is what it should look like after the ADA ramp goes down. Remember, we left the chip back on this one. And then when you put the slurry in, you get a nice smooth transition. So that's just a good picture of what it should look like. So you can meet the ADA requirements and specifications. Next we have is a roller. What type of roller is the specification required? Did you want a steel drum? Was it rubber pneumatic rollers? What was it? Typically we use a rubber pneumatic rollers just because it needs it in better. If you use a steel drum and you don't have a real smooth road and there's highs and lows in it, well, that steel drum, the roller is going to hit the highs and not going to hit the lows. So it's better off to use a pneumatic roller. So how many passes on that roller? We first started doing this, we only required 2 or 3 passes. Then we increase that as we go because we want to get that rock kneaded in and tight. And it takes a required amount of passes. It could be 4 passes, it could be 6, it could be only 3. That's fine, but whatever the specs say is what it is, because you want to get that compacted, you want to get those edges of that rock that are sticking up and get those to lay flat to get a smoother surface and just to get it embedded in the material. So got to pay attention to the specs for the rolling. Sweeping before and after the project. Remember, we've been saying we want everything clean and ready to go. So they need to clean it beforehand with a sweeper and make sure it's clean. So how many passes is that? Does it say in the specification on how many passes you want them to do? The timing of the sweeper. Once you get the slurry down, how long before you wait before you get a sweeper on it? Sure, it's going to break. It's going to set up for a few days, let traffic have it. Then when you want to bring a sweeper in, and then the speed of the sweeper. We add that in there. We kind of remind everybody the speed because there's sometimes you'll get sweeper operators out there. They go way too fast. And what it does, they're picking up half the rock they should, and they're kicking the rest of it up off and onto the sidewalk, into the gutter, and up on the driveways, which creates more work for the contractor. So pay attention to the speed, know the timing of the sweeper, when they're supposed to be out there, and then you need somebody out there you need to be counting the passes on how many they're doing, because it will be in the specs if you're doing a Roseville job. If it's not in the specs, then don't worry about it. The contractor will just take care of it, but it's up to you to make sure it gets done. So posting a notification. This is very important. Remember, we talked about communicate. Well, that's not only for the inspector, that's for the entire project. We put this on the website. We advertise it all the time. We do social media. We have a couple people in the department that do all this. But for the residential ones, and we're doing a neighborhood, we'll send letters out 2 months prior, and we let the property owners know what's going on, and we let the renters. We found that when we send a letter to the address, it doesn't always get to whoever's living in the house because it could be a rental. We don't know that. So we make sure we look it up and try to catch everybody, try to get the letter to the owner, because it could be different than the property itself. So we send out a couple letters, make sure everybody knows. And then in the letter is a full communication of what the process is, what we're going to be doing, why we're doing it, and what our pavement preservation program consists of. Just kind of give a tidbit of why we're out there and how we maintain the city streets. So then 3 days prior, we're going to do door hangers. And this is for the contractor to do. We send the letters out internally, and then the door hangers and the street barricades are done by the contractor. So that's always listed in the specifications, so the contractor knows what to bid on. And they allow time to get it done. And then on the street barricade, we'll have the no parking and to and from, and the dates and everything, and those are updated as we go. So you can see if we're going to push a street to the back of the list or to the end, there's quite a bit of notification that has to be happening. We don't send a letter out if we're going to redo a street or come back to it. We just do the door hangers and also the street barricades. So traffic control and road closures, contractors are responsible for setting up detours and ensuring road closures are in place. That's totally on them. Did the contractor get a traffic control plan approved? They have to, usually at the pre-con meeting, they'll bring their traffic control plans, submit them. The city will okay them, and then we send it back to them and say, hey, it's okay, this traffic control plan looks good. Many times they don't get it done in time, and then we have to ask for it a week or two later. But as long as we get it and get it approved before the project starts, we're okay. Inspectors need to make sure all traffic control is in place for the duration of the project. Contractors are moving fast. They may put some message boards out or some other barricades, and they may need them for the next job. Well, they're not supposed to take it until they're done with this job. So make sure it's all in place for the duration of the project. Very important. They're important for the traffic safety. So the inspector needs to know what that traffic safety is. Pedestrian safety. I added this slide in here to the right because you can see that the sidewalk was blocked off. And we had one instance where we were doing a neighborhood and it backed up to a arterial road. And sure enough, at 5 o'clock, that must have been 5:30 in the afternoon, I was still in the office and we get a call in our maintenance division that we have somebody on a wheelchair and they're stuck at the end of a barricade. They're trying to get to the grocery store. She can't get there. She has to turn around, go all the way back a mile past her house to find another route. This happened because the contractor didn't leave room and didn't take into consideration pedestrian traffic coming through and needing to get through the project because they did all 4 corners of the intersection in one time in one day. And that's not what we do. So the inspector should have caught that. He didn't. We made arrangements for it. We got around it. But if you're going to block it off, just make a path to go around. Just set something up in the street. Maybe not this one's a busy street, but go around and block it off and make a clear path so pedestrians and people with ADA access can get around. So, and then there's another one to remove rocks from the sidewalk. I want to throw that in there again because that's very important for the pedestrians. Again, on traffic safety, even the roads leading up to the project, some of the arterials that are leading up to a project. If you got a lane closed, you're doing something ahead. This picture on the right, probably not the best thing to do. You never want to split a lane of traffic in the middle. But this is just a good example. It's just, nobody's going to get an accident. That's more than likely, but it's not done correctly. And the inspector should see that and notify the contractor to do right. Here's a good picture of what happens when you don't do traffic control correctly. Somebody goes through the traffic controller, gets caught in between where the slurry is happening, or they're inside your traffic control for whatever reason, and now they're trying to get out. So they're finding ways to get out, leaving tire marks all over everything and tracking it from the wet slurry, and the contractor is responsible to clean this up. So it's advantageous for them to make sure their traffic control is correct and make sure they have people checking it all the time. Otherwise, you end up with this, and this is just another punch list item that the contractor is going to come back and have to clean this off. Now, some agencies say, oh, that'll come off in a year or so or whatever, the sun, it'll fade it and it'll go away, but we have them pressure wash that off to get it off right away. We don't want to have to deal with that. Here's another one where a car got caught inside. It looks like they were going towards the detour from the inside and figured they couldn't get out, so they flipped a U-in and going back the other way. This is one for your punch list, for the inspector's punch list item. Let the contractor know right away, and hopefully they can take care of this before they leave town with all their equipment. More than likely, that's what they do. But sometimes if they have a tight schedule, they have maybe 4 or 5 of these, and they'll come back come back in a few weeks. After they've gone and done another project, they'll come back and take care of all the punch list items at once. But make sure it's documented and let them know. Pictures and written documentation. Here's a good one. Where it looks like this was a UPS or a FedEx truck that got in there. You can see the dual wheels and then the third front wheels. They got caught, couldn't find a way out. So he was trying to find a way out. For some reason went up on the sidewalk. Maybe he thought he'd get up there and park for a while, but noticed it was tracking. I don't know what happened. I wasn't there, but I do know this was a delivery truck that got caught inside and trying to get out. And this is just another example of it's ruining the mat. And now the contractor's going to have to come back and smooth this out and put a new surface treatment out there to fix that. And clean off the sidewalk.